The plane uncle is gonna ride with some lady looks like it's gonna catch fire. He really shouldn't get on that plane.
The sudden exclamation from little Emily caught both husband and wife off guard, prompting a surprised huh from both. Especially me, I was doubly shocked. A plane ride with another woman? I thought he was just going on a business trip. Why does he need to ride with a woman? The reason quickly became clear. Unforgivable. To think he'd betray me and plan a romantic getaway. Ignoring the advice of better not get on that plane, John, my husband, went off to the airport anyway. So I decided to start my own revenge drama. My name is Susan Harris, a housewife in my 30s. I live with John, my husband. We're both working, so the house is often empty. We tend to spend our weekends just chilling at home, but recently, John has been acting a bit strange. He's been coming home much later than before. Even on weekends, he often leaves the house claiming he has work. The number of times he's gone on business trips, leaving the house empty for days, has increased. I'd be lying if I said I didn't find John's behavior suspicious. But I haven't found any definitive proof. Besides, I was scared to stir the pot by pointing out John's behavior. So, today, like every other day, I turn a blind eye to John's selfish actions and somehow we keep our marriage going. Then, one day, a little visitor came to our house. It was Emily, my brother and his wife's daughter. To me, she's my niece. My brother and his wife live close by, and we often dine together and go shopping, interacting in various ways. I've watched over Emily since she was a baby, and I often visit my brother's house to play with her, so Emily has grown quite fond of me. On a day when my brother and his wife absolutely couldn't, I, having the day off, agreed to have Emily over and look after her for the day.
Auntie, let's play. Emily wants to play with dolls,
she said with a smile as bright as a blooming flower as soon as she saw me, begging to play. I was completely smitten with Emily. Okay, please take good care of her today, my brother said.
Count on me. I'll call if anything comes up.
When I said that, my brother smiled as if relieved. Then I brought Emily home, and we spent a fulfilling day playing with dolls and baking cookies with the ingredients I had prepared. In the midst of this, I heard the door open.
Keep it down, will ya? It's my day off and you woke me up,
grumbled John as he came out of his room. He didn't seem to notice Emily was there and glared at me before letting out a big sigh.
Generally, if you know your husband is resting at home, wouldn't you try to keep it down and let him rest peacefully? Can't you even be considerate of such trivial things? You're really failing as a wife, he snapped. I'm sorry for the noise. But I did tell you beforehand that Emily was coming over today, didn't I? I even mentioned it might get a bit loud. Don't give me that excuse,
John shouted back when I tried to reason with him. Surprised by his loud voice, I realized Emily, who was baking with me, looked like she was about to cry, so I quickly focused on getting John out of there. Even as John hurled terrible words at me, all I could say was I'm sorry. I didn't want to provoke John any further and scare Emily. Eventually, John seemed satisfied and said, I'm gonna wash my face, disappearing into the washroom. Relieved, I turned to Emily and apologized, and she bravely shook her head, saying, It's okay.
Uncle looks like he's gonna fall,
Emily suddenly said after John went to the washroom. Again? I asked, and she nodded. Emily has always said strange things. Almost like she can see into the future, especially about people she's close to or sees often. At first, I thought it was just a child's play, and responded casually with Is that so? However, after experiencing several instances where things happened exactly as Emily had said, I came to accept that this child must indeed be seeing something extraordinary. So, without doubting her words, I just nodded and carried on, and a few minutes later, I heard a loud noise from the washroom, followed by John's angry voice, Ouch. Once again, it happened just as Emily said it would. John came back from the washroom, his face red, and started hurling more terrible words at me.
You could have at least cleaned the bathroom properly. Because of you, I slipped and fell.
Even though I knew I wasn't the type to neglect cleaning and that the bathroom was always spotless. John's claim was clearly due to his own carelessness, and it was unbearable how he was pinning it on me.
I always keep it clean. Don't blame me for your own carelessness, okay? Don't talk back to me. It's your fault, so apologize properly.
His words were so unreasonable that I was utterly astounded. Despite it all being his own doing, He was pushing the blame on me, making me apologize, just to vent his frustrations. I sighed at John, who was like a small child unable to even control his own emotions. At the beginning of our marriage, John wasn't this selfish. He was, rather, a person who seemed to care about others. But as time went by, John began to show his true colors. He really didn't seem to care about anyone else at all. Just 1 month into our marriage, I found myself living as John's maid. I basically couldn't talk back to John, and even if I was made to do something I didn't want to, I couldn't complain. That was the rule imposed on me. If asked whether I wasn't angry about it, honestly, I doubt I could nod in agreement. However, I dreaded making waves in our marriage and complicating our life together even more. About a week had passed since the day Emily came to our house, when news of John's next business trip came in. This was his 3rd trip this month, and this time he was not going to be back for about a week. On the day he was to leave, as I was helping him pack, my phone rang. Who could it be? It was from my brother's phone. Thinking something might be wrong, I excused myself from John and answered the call, only to find Emily on the line. She probably borrowed my brother's phone. Emily sounded panicked on the other end. I told her to calm down and listened to what she had to say, and then she dropped a bombshell.
Uncle's plane, the one with a lady on it, it's gonna catch fire. He really shouldn't get on that plane.
I was shocked for 2 reasons. Emily's words about the plane catching fire and the fact that John was boarding a plane with a woman, despite being on a business trip. It was unthinkable for him to be on a plane with a woman on a business trip. What on earth was going on? It was getting me nowhere just thinking about it, so I told John that Emily had called and said, if possible, it's best not to get on the plane. But John brushed it off. I ain't got no obligation to play along with a kid's game. Today's trip is set, no way I'm not going, and he left the house. He would surely head straight to the airport. Emily's predictions had never been wrong before. It's likely not going to be any different this time, and John will probably meet a terrible fate. As his wife, I probably should tell him to turn back immediately. But more than that, I was concerned about why he was getting on a plane with another woman. I couldn't help but feel like I needed to uncover the reason behind why such a situation had occurred. So I decided not to stop John forcibly and just watch how things would unfold. So I could be ready to start my own vengeance if need be. Sometime later, while I was relaxing at home, the word breaking news flashed on the television that I had left on. Curious, I saw that a plane that had just left Japan had crashed. I had a bad feeling, and upon checking, sure enough, it was the plane John was on. The TV showed images of the plane on fire, perhaps ignited by gasoline. Was this what Emily was talking about? Just as I was starting to make sense of it all, I received a call from the rescue team. John had been rushed to the hospital and was in a touch-and-go situation. They also asked about a woman who was with John. Apparently in her 20s and worked nights, who had unfortunately died immediately after the accident. The rescue worker had tried to contact her relatives but couldn't reach anyone and, as a last resort, asked me. Regrettably, I had no information about her and had to confess as much. After thanking me for my cooperation, the rescue worker hung up. Life-saving efforts were likely still ongoing. I couldn't help but feel sorry for those involved in the accident. John was taken to the ICU. Due to the urgency of his condition, no visitors were allowed until he was stable, even family. While I should have been upset by this, I had other things I wanted to do, so it worked out for me. I properly informed both our families about John's accident. My in-laws were especially shocked, and hearing my mother-in-law break down crying over the phone genuinely pained me. But my desire for revenge is far from over. I won't be satisfied until I've dragged him through so much hell that he regrets even clinging to life. I could never forgive John for treating me like nothing more than a maid, while he gallivanted about and engaged in affairs. A few days later, I got a call from the hospital. Apparently, John had regained consciousness. His condition was gradually improving, and soon he was moved to a general ward, so I steeled myself to visit him. When I mentioned John's name at the hospital, the nurse looked at me with pity and said, "Ah, the one from that accident. I've been frequently checking the news, and it seems that the crash was one of the worst in history, with many lives lost." Among them, I sensed an extraordinary will to live in John, who had miraculously survived. Led by the nurse to his room, I found John asleep, connected to many 4 drips. The nurse told me that he was working hard at physical therapy every day, and after it ends, he'd sleep like a log. Since John's doctor was free at the moment, we decided to talk while John was asleep, and I got a detailed explanation about his condition. The doctor said that John suffered severe burns all over his body in the accident, and the impact of the crash also damaged his spine, causing him to lose sensation in his lower body. No matter what treatments are tried, the sensation in his lower body will likely never return. He can no longer walk or even stand, let alone go to the bathroom by himself. Of course, from now on, he'll be forced to live in a wheelchair, and he's currently undergoing rehab to learn how to manage daily life on his own. When John learned that he would never regain sensation in his lower body, he looked utterly hopeless about the future ahead. I had never seen John seriously commit to anything, whether it was his work, relationships, or with me. Hearing that John was diligently doing his rehab, I wondered if there had been some mistake, but John has a high pride, and he probably couldn't accept a life dependent on others, not from me. From now on, he's going to have to live with disabilities, and no matter how hard he tries, he won't have any choice but to rely on others. Yet, despite understanding that, he stubbornly refuses to depend on me, which almost made me smirk. The doctor provided me with materials on how to renovate the house for wheelchair access or move to a barrier-free home, and how to better deal with John's disabilities in the future. The more I read the materials, the more I realized the gravity of John's condition, and I suddenly felt a bit sorry for him. But this predicament is the result of his own doing. If only he had listened to Emily's words and cancelled but a fair trip, all of this could have been avoided. It wasn't even work-related, he should have prioritized his own life. That would have probably saved the life of his affair partner as well. Due to John's poor judgment, one life was lost, and now he has to live bearing a heavy burden. I've truly realized how important it is to trust and accept others' words. I've always trusted Emily and her advice, and I'm so glad I did. I'm thinking of sending Emily a thank you message later when John groaned and woke up.
Susan? Is that you, Susan? You came?
Seeing me, John looked relieved and continued to speak.
I've been lonely since you haven't visited for a while. Thanks for coming. I can't offer you anything, but make yourself at home.
This was a completely different attitude from the John who used to belittle me and treat me like a maid. I wondered if the accident caused him to lose his memory, but the next words out of his mouth brought me back to reality.
Did the doc fill you in? My lower half, it's not gonna move anymore. This hospital life, it's like being in hell. I hate the idea of having a stranger take care of my personal needs. I'd prefer you 100 times over. I just want to be discharged and go home.
John's pride was evident, he couldn't stand being cared for by the nurses. Even though the nurses were just doing their job for him, I thought it incredibly ignorant to speak like that. And John continued with his selfish remarks.
I know I've become like this, but being with you makes me want to keep on living. So let's continue to support each other as husband and wife, okay?
Continue to support each other? If my memory serves me right, we've never supported each other as a couple. Not even once. John always left the household to me and went out to play. I turned a blind eye because he was tired from work, but if he's been cheating, that's a whole different story. Cheating is outright betrayal. The more I talk to John, the angrier I get. I'm overwhelmed by the feeling that I must not forgive this man. And my instincts scream to bring him down completely, so he can never be so presumptuous again. Unaware of this, John suggests, maybe we should just move, or living with my parents might not be a bad idea, as if he hasn't woken from his dream. That's why I decided to make him face reality first.
Sorry, but I have no intention whatsoever of taking care of you.
At my words, John's eyes widen in shock. Then, with a trembling voice full of disbelief, he scrambles for words.
Don't make such a cruel joke, please. I genuinely believe that you would accept me, help me out. But to hear such a joke, it really hurts. It's not a joke at all. I'm serious. Let's get a divorce. I can't stand the thought of continuing as your wife after the way you behaved, not to mention the cheating. And I certainly won't be taking care of you.
When I make myself clear, John seems to finally understand how I feel, and he starts to babble in panic.
But that's just too much, isn't it? As you can see, I've become paralyzed from the waist down. I can't live on my own. I need you. Please, don't abandon me. You're all I have.
Tears well up in John's eyes. He must be serious about trying to hold on to me. Never before has John tried to face me this honestly. Even when I tried to confront the issues, he would brush me off saying it's too troublesome and wouldn't even engage in a proper discussion, which is essential for a married couple. But now, he's suddenly saying he wants to talk, seemingly in an attempt to protect himself. But it's not for my sake, or because he wants us to work as a couple. It's just John being selfish, wanting me to remain as his maid, to make his life easier going forward. I have no obligation to indulge such selfishness, and there's nothing in it for me. Would the old me, who loved John with all her heart, no matter how problematic his behavior, have listened to his words and agonized over them? Maybe, if I accept John now, even if we can't support each other, we might have a different kind of marriage, a bit closer to what it should be. John has a high self-esteem and can't bear to rely on others, so even in this state, he'd probably find work and try to support himself. If there's a chance to start over, it would be now. Such an opportunity won't come again. If I abandon John here, that's the end of our relationship. We'll never go back to being a couple, and he'll lose his support in me, likely facing hardship. If I leave John now, I might be dooming him to a life of wandering, lost and alone. It's a significant decision, as a person and as John's wife. But I've already decided not to go back. Because the love has cooled, and the trust in John is gone. Sure, if I accept him now, we might talk seriously for a while, and lead a life more like a married couple. But I've grown tired from being treated like John's servant for so long. I can't bear the thought of striving for his sake any longer.
Please, think it over. Without you, I really can't do anything. Look at me, I can't walk or even stand. Don't just leave a guy like this alone.
John's tone is earnest. He knows if he loses me now, he's finished. It was clear to me that he was desperate to keep me tied to him here, to not let me go. But still.
I'm sorry. I just can't continue with you anymore. So, please give up.
With that, I stand up to leave. John looks at me and pleads, "Wait, let's talk," but I leave the hospital room without listening to his cries. Soon after, my divorce from John was finalized. A mutual acquaintance of John and me just happened to know about John's affair, and when they heard about John's accident, they testified in court, which swung things even more in my favor. John begged me not to leave him, crying until the end, but my disgust for him had grown so strong that I couldn't stand the sight of him and didn't take any of his words to heart. I was able to claim a reasonable amount in alimony, though it wasn't a large sum. However, John had to quit his job because of the accident, and now he's working at a company that employs people with disabilities, doing much simpler work, so his salary has decreased. He's struggling to make ends meet with the alimony payments and can't afford a decent life. John's parents disowned him as soon as the affair came to light, and they didn't care if he was in a wheelchair. They want him to live strong on his own from now on. As for me, I'm living a relatively happy life after divorcing John. My brother and his wife, worried about me suddenly being single, bring Emily over often, which keeps me from feeling lonely.
Auntie, let's play, let's play.
Emily's words were the wake-up call I needed. That's why I'm so grateful to her. As an aunt, I want to keep trying to be a reliable presence for her.